Perek Beis, Pasuk Lamed Zayin, where now Daniel is telling Nevuchadnezzar the meaning of the dream. And in the meaning of the dream, there's a number of differences of what he meant. And there's a big machlokes, and it's very, very relevant to what's going on in the world today, as we will see. I'm going to quick reminder what the dream was. He saw this awesome statue that the head was of gold, the chest was of silver, the thighs were of copper, the stomach and thighs were copper, and then the feet were made out of metal, iron, with clay, some like this and some like that, and also the toes were like that as well. So now he starts interpreting. So we already said last time that Daniel starts off by saying, Ant Malko Melech HaMashiach, you are the king of all kings, which in Chazal it says, this is talking to the Eibishter, but there are those that say it's Nevuchadnetzar. And the reason why he was so special, we said it because he was either a descendant or a child or the spirit of Shlomo HaMelech. And he says, the Eibishter gives you Malchus, Chisna, V'Sakva, V'Ikara Yahavlach. Hashem gave you this tremendous, awesome power. And as he continues, he's soon going to say that you are the head of the head of the statue. The head of the statue, which is of gold, that references to you. But in short, just like a quick overview, what most Mefarshim say, I'll soon say one a different opinion, but most Mefarshim say that this statue shows on all the superpowers in the world until Mashiach will come. And in general, it's 4, and we'll see maybe 5. And he calls him the first one, the most powerful one. First of all, he was the first superpower besides the Yidden. This is the first, Shlomo HaMelech was a superpower that ruled over the whole world, but this is the first non-Jewish superpower, Nevuchadnezzar, and because he's the first one, he's called the head, and he's the most powerful one amongst all the other ones as well, and we'll see something very, very interesting, which unique about Nevuchadnezzar, which is the only other person in history is Shlomo HaMelech, what he had. Here Mefarshim point out that there's like 3 lashonos over here about his power, about Chisna, V'Sakpa, V'Ikara, they compare it to gold, that they say, Levi, they say that the gold is very durable, very strong, and also gold is very precious, and similarly his kingdom was very durable, very strong, and also very special. And now comes the second thing that he says about Nevuchadnezzar. He tells him, wherever people live, you'll rule over them. But then he says, animals and birds, you have bidoch. Hashem gave into your hand, he made you rule on all of them. So you are the head of the golden head. Now the simple meaning is that you ruled over animals. So most Mefarshim teach that it means that you rule over the whole world, even places where only animals roam, you rule over them as well. However, there are 2 Ma'amorei Chazal which make it a lot more fascinating. One Ma'amor Chazal says that even horses would not make noise, even birds wouldn't chirp without permission from Nevuchadnezzar. The only other person in history we say this about is Shlomo HaMelech, that he ruled over the animals. But Chazal say, based on this pasuk, that Nevuchadnezzar was so powerful, he ruled over animals. And the second fascinating medrash is that Nevuchadnezzar would ride on a lion. We know noblemen ride on horses. In the past, it was often on camels and donkeys. And we have stories of people riding on elephants, by Antiochus and all that. But I don't know of anybody else in Chazal that was a person that rode on a lion. The Eirach HaKadosh is a story that he rode on a lion, a one-time thing. But even that is not so clear. But here Chazal say he rode, and it's not from Chazal. Chazal say he rode on a lion and he had a snake as a headband. So he tied a snake to his head, imagine a curb sticking off his head like that, and he's riding on a lion, and that's what it means that he had this rule. So that shows on a tremendous power of Nebuchadnezzar that nobody else had. Well, apparently, the Pasha said, that snake anybody can wear. We had that in the snake shiur. Your Gucci socks, whatever they are. Pasuk Lametes, Uvasrach tekum malku acharoi, eira minoch, after you is going to be another kingdom weaker than you, Umalchus lisa achri denachasha disishlat bechalara, and a third one which will be like copper. Now, this pasuk doesn't say what it's referring to. It just says that the arms of silver and then the stomach and the thighs of copper refers to two other kingdoms after you. So one shot which says in Zohar, which nobody else says, is referring to the, Nevuchadnezzar's son and grandson. Nebuchadnezzar's son was Abel and his grandson was Belshazzar. So that's what the Zohar says, and this was a reward to Nebuchadnezzar that he had two sons, which, according to this pshat, also ruled over the whole world. A reward because Nebuchadnezzar is the first king of Bavel. His name was Meredach Baladan ben Baladan, and he gave honor to the Eibishter. It's against Samaisa. But that's only one pshat. The majority of Mefarshim and Chazal say that what this is referring to is the two kingdoms that come after Bavel. Who are the kings that come after Bavel? So the second kingdom is of Poras U'Madai. Poras U'Madai was the second world power, and according to this, Nebuchadnezzar was a tremendous world power. It was a relatively short amount of time, only 70 years. So him and his son and his grandson, it was a short dynasty. The next world superpower is Kodesh and Daryavish Madai Poras, which we call Media and Persia, mainly known as Persia. And over there, it's very unclear how long they lasted, meaning how many kings there were, because there was first a father-in-law and son-in-law. There was Kodesh and Daryavish. Daryavish was the father-in-law. Kodesh was the son-in-law. Madai and Poras, they made a pact that they're going to together overthrow Nebuchadnezzar. That was Belshazzar at that time. They're going to overthrow Bavel, and that was there's a story that we'll see later in Daniel where they end up killing him. After them, the next king was, it's a bit unclear if it was Achashverosh or Artaxerxes, and after him was another king, which was the second, either Daryavish or Kodesh. Apparently, just as you know, by Mitzrayim, every king was named Perek. So by Madai Poras, some of the kings had three names: Kodesh, Daryavish, and Artaxerxes. So it gets very confusing which is which, the first, the second, and the third. So it's a bit unclear if there was 4 kings or 5 kings, but they were for a relatively shorter amount of time. Yes? Okay, so that could be a pshat, but so that's what we're referring to in the silver. And the reason why we're corresponding to the hands, because it was really 2 kingdoms. It was Madai Poras, so it was called the 2 hands. Then the third one that rules over the whole world, the copper one, that's referring to who comes after the Persians? No? Yavan. Who was the first king of Yavan? Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great, and the Chazal say that when they touch this pasuk, they say that he was greater than the Persians, even though it's copper. And usually today we say that silver is more important than copper. Maybe now that there's no pennies anymore, maybe coppers will start becoming more chashuv. Who knows? But the pashtus, copper is a lesser. We have in the Parshas Truma. Zav kesef u'nechayshus. Copper is stronger than silver, so that fits. So it might be that silver might be more precious, but copper is stronger. And so the kingdom of Alexander was a stronger kingdom than the kingdom of the Persians, and he ruled over the whole world also. The Gemara speaks about this, that when the Gemara gives a list of all those that ruled over the whole world, the Gemara does not mention Alexander the Great. So the question is asked, I think Taisvus asked the question, what's of Alexander? And the Gemara says that it's either the Gemara or Taisvus, I forget. No. Taisvus says because it's not mentioned in Chazal. But Alexander, in Pesukim, it's not in Pesukim. Oh, by Yerushalayim it says that? That's the answer. Yerushalayim, so that's the Gemara. Okay, so Alexander was definitely also very, very powerful, and he was the first king that ruled over the first king of Yavan. Afterwards, when Alexander dies very young, and then his kingdom breaks up into all of his generals, whatever they're called over there, Ptolemy and... other names is Salisud, I forget how to pronounce these names. But basically, the kingdom continued for a few generations. Also, not too long. I think it was 52 years altogether, maybe. No, sorry. The Persians were 52 years. They were 180 years. And then comes then comes the 4th superpower. I hear the pasuk says, "To have a sakifa kefarzela," it's going to be as strong as iron. Just like the iron breaks and flattens everything, so too this kingdom will be like metal that will destroy everything. What is this 4th kingdom? So this is a big machlokes in the Mefarshim. What is the 4th kingdom? the two main options are either the Christians or the Muslims. And the Muslims, it can't be mamish the Muslims, because the Muslims did not come right afterwards. They didn't come right after the Greeks. It was a long time later. So the pastors, it must mean the Romans. But then the question the Mefarshim asked, Ibn Ezra asks, what about the Muslims? They were also a superpower for a long time. So, Mazeh? Huh? From outside or from inside? Outside. Okay. So it's the Romans or the Muslims. Again, most Pirushim say that it's the Romans, but then it connects. And this is what he continues weiter. And this is very relevant to today, what's going on in the world. He says, you saw that the feet and the toes, some of it is made out of clay. Some out of iron, because Malchu Fliga Teheve, it's going to be a split kingdom, and it's going to have the power of iron. So there's a few Pesukim which seem to be saying the same thing over here, but he's saying that the kingdom will be split into two, because even this powerful kingdom, so you can learn it two ways. Either that the Romans will divide into two kingdoms, or we're here referring to that the Romans eventually split into the Muslims, which is a hard thing to say, because the Muslims didn't come from the Romans. It wasn't that the Christians became Muslims. The Muslims came from other countries, in my understanding. But here we're starting to show that there's going to be two parts, and many say that the Muslims are the ones that are clay. Now the Muslims are the clay. Why are they clay? Because they're weaker relatively to the Christians that are the metal. Also, clay is a racist joke. Can we say racist jokes? I like racist jokes. So they say that the elephant met a mouse, and the elephant tells the mouse, "I forgot who I am. Can you help me figure out who I am?" So the mouse says, "Well, you're huge, you have big ears, you have a huge tusk, you have these things coming out of your sides, so you're probably an elephant." So back an elephant. So the mouse tells the elephant, "Can you tell me who I am? I forgot who I am." So the elephant looks at him and he says, "You're small, you stink, you're always getting in the way of everything, everybody hates you, you're probably an Arab." Ha ha ha. So the clay is like shows on something which is cheaper and not so good, but it also ends up being powerful and strong. Either way, it says that it's supporting each other. They support each other, and then he says weiter, when it comes to the fourth superpower, whether it's the Romans or it's the Muslims or both, he says that it's going to be like the toes. There's going to be 10 of them. They're going to be all over the place, and some Muslim countries will be very strong, some will be very weak, and some Christian countries will be very strong, and some will be very weak. So here's already leading us to what's going on in the world today. So even though today I assume that most people would agree that America is the superpower, but there's definitely other ones coming up, and in the Muslim world, there's also superpowers as well. So, and there's a whole bunch of them. And they're all like working together somewhat, all together with each other. And then he says, you saw that the metal is mixed with the clay. It shows that the families will mix with each other. But they're not going to be really connected. But just like you can't really mix metal and clay. Metals, you can melt different metals and make them work together. But you can't make metal and clay work together. So too, the Romans and the Christians, the Christians and the Muslims will be working together, but they won't really become friends. So when I was reading this, I was thinking to myself that those that are aware of the world news, so Qatar is a Muslim country. They gave a very big present to Trump, who is the president of the Christian country. So Kivyachol, there's a friendship between them. But at the same time, it's understood that there isn't really a real love relationship over here. They're not really good friends. At the end of the day, Qatar is a Muslim terrible country which has no problem supporting terrorism. And Trump, Kivyachol, is their friend and doesn't like it. So you could say that it's referring to that. But it says that either way, some of us say we're talking about marriages that happen. Now in the past that was very normal. There was many kingdoms that would marry into each other, France and England and many others with Germany, Spain. They would try to make shidduchim between the prince and the princess and different things in order to make the countries become one monarchy, one ruling family. But even though these things happened, a lot of times there was still fighting amongst them. And there's the famous story with the famous get, Sir Henry, the against Amaisa. Many people have shiur on it. There's a whole story with a certain king that he called a Rav to ask him if the din of Yibum applies today. It was a whole story that he got divorced and his wife. It was a whole. They wanted to know what the Torah says in order for to break up a marriage between. I think it was England and Spain. A whole long story that Yidden got involved. There was a very ganze lang gamais. You never heard the story? It's written about also. It's very, very cool. Dierman has a share about it also. Others as well. I don't know, King Henry and the get or something. When King Henry asked a rabbi for advice, I forget the details. So there was definitely throughout history many times where they marry into each other and they become friendly. So that's what he's saying, and that's the word over here that you have these different types. So all the different again. And he says that the 10 toes show on the 10 kingdoms that are out there today. I'm just thinking to myself as I'm learning this that China is not mentioned over here because China is not Muslim and China is not Christian, right? I think. Anybody? Yeah. China's not Christian. No. It's not Christian or Muslim. They're officially. Well, here we're talking about Nevuah, so we're talking about the future. And China, I think today is definitely a superpower. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, but it's for sure up in the top 5, if not the top 3. And L'chayr should be mentioned. There could be that's talking about the toes, that it's the Kivyachon. Russia is Christian, the pastors. Putin is Christian. Ukraine is not a superpower. Ukraine is nothing. But l'chayr, so that's the Christian. Instead of the superpower, I guess, yeah, you have a point. You think so? After Ukraine, didn't give in so quickly. Okay, so the question is how to put China into the story. I think China's for sure part of it. In a moment, we'll get to that in the next pasuk is Israel. So these are all these superpowers that are fighting. So you have the 10 superpowers again, and some of them are weak, some of them are stronger, some of them are clay, some are iron, some are the Christians and the Muslims. That's the way most Mepharshim say it. And then pasuk Mem Dalid Uviyemeyan di Malchaya Inun. And in the days of these kings, of all when you have so many, in the world you don't have it. You ever have like today? You have so many Muslim superpowers and so many Christian superpowers. The Muslim, Qatar, Iran, Iraq, these are Saudi Arabia. They're not. I mean, they're powerful countries within themselves. Though they're not as strong as the Christian countries. He says that, but they're also strengthened, and there is some kind of relationship between them. We have this the Abraham Accords. I mean, whatever. Not that. That's something else. The Accords, whatever it is, the peace between Trump and Qatar. So you have some kind of relationship, and that it says that the iron supports the clay. Because there's a peace between them, even though they don't really love each other, but it gives them a toy, gives them a strength. So in this time, yeah? What are Indian? Maybe also. They're not Christians or Muslims, no, they're Hindus. So he says at that time, there's going to be Yekim Elekosh Maya Malchu, Hashem is going to bring a king at that time, that this kingdom will never be destroyed, and from when this kingdom takes over, no other country will become king. He will destroy all these other kings, and this will last forever. And he continues to explain that this is basically talking about Melech HaMashiach. This is Melech HaMashiach, that he's going to come and he's going to destroy all the goyim. And that was the marshal that we said, that a stone came out and knocked. I didn't say this before. The stone came out and killed the statue. So that stone comes from it was carved out of a mountain. That's referring to Mashiach coming of the mountain of the Yidden. It also says that it came like a regular stone, like it's a human being. The Mashiach is an actual a person. It's a basar of Adam, and he comes and he's going to hit them. And it says he's going to hit them at their feet, and the whole thing will come collapsing down. So he says, "Kol kovel de chazayse di mituris gezeres even di love yidai." And that you saw that the stone comes without. No one actually comes and it's not like a gradual growth. It's something which comes out of nowhere. V'hadekes parzela nechosha chaspa kaspa v'dahava, and it ends up crushing all the other things. El korrav v'idala malko madvileve achrei denov v'yatziv chalma mehim pisher. So he says that it's going to, so Mepharshim say, once he hits the bottom, everything else comes crashing down, which means that after Mashiach reveals himself, and he starts attacking the Goyim, then the Goyim will start fighting with each other and kill each other. Maybe that's Russia and Ukraine, who knows? That as a result of the beginning of these galus of Mashiach, the Goyim will start fighting with each other till they all destroy each other, till nothing will remain, and from then on, the Mashiach will become this huge mountain, take over the whole world, which rose on the kingdom of Klal Yisrael of Mashiach. Amen. And he concludes by saying that this is the king, this is the dream, and this is the interpretation. And just like you saw that I got the dream right, I told you the actual dream, so too, I'm telling you this is the actual interpretation of what it means. So this is all what Daniel is telling Nevuchadnetzar. And Nebuchadnezzar obviously is fascinated because he sees the actual dream was told to him. And also, the interpretation makes a lot of sense, and he accepts it very much. At that point, he falls on the floor, and he bows down to Daniel. He wants to start giving him karbonos. In those times, whenever you respect something, you make it into a god. That was the Seder. Someone is very smart, he's probably the god of smart. Someone's strong, he's the god of strength. And if someone's a god, you have to serve him. So because of that, Nebuchadnezzar wants to start serving Daniel. He wants to get and bow down to him and make him a king and give him karbonos. Because, and he says that it must be that this chachma comes from a godly source, and that's why I want to serve you. So of course Daniel says, no, you don't. I'm not a god. I'm just a person. You can't bow down to me. So Nebuchadnezzar, when he realizes that, Anei Malkul Daniel v'Omar, he says, Mikshoit the Elokachin hu Elokol Likinu Mori Malchin v'Goli Rozin the Echalp v'Mikli Rozadeno. I'm not. The fact that I want to serve you doesn't mean that I don't believe in the real king. I mean the Eibishter is the king of all kings. But still, by then, it's not a sin. You can have the main God and how much smaller gods. But I see you don't like it, so you're upset at me for even entertaining the thought of making you a king. It's because I'm denying the Eibishter. No, I'm not denying the Eibishter. I recognize that the Eibishter is the king of all kings. I just wanted to serve you as well. If you don't want it, it's fine, but that was my kavanah. So he wanted to clarify that. And then he says, Adayin, Malkul Daniel Rabbi, then he appoints Daniel to be in charge. Umatnon Rabrevan Sagin Yahavle, he gives him many, many gifts. Vahashklete al kol medinas Bavel, he makes him basically this Mishnah Lamelech kind of, in charge of the entire Bavel. Vrav Signin al kol Hakim Bavel, this chief minister. So he gets very excited about Daniel, and he says, you have to be my minister here all the time. You're going to be my second in command and help me in everything else in the country. Daniel, Bo Min Malko, he tells the king, Umani el Avidito di Medinas Bavel, Shadrach, Meshach, Vaved Nagoy. Who are Shadrach, Meshach, and Vaved Nagoy? Hanani, Mishael, Vazarya. Daniel tells the king, please, I'm honored, but I'd rather not have such a responsibility. I'd rather share with my friends, and this way I can do what I want to do. The Daniel Bisra Malka, let me just remain do what I was doing till now. I don't want to take this such a responsibility. And so he asked him to take over, and that's what ends up happening. Indeed, they split up the responsibilities amongst the four of them, so it shouldn't be just one. That finishes, that's the end of Perek Beis, and then we move on afterwards to Perek Gimel, which I guess we'll leave for next time. Yeah, it makes sense to stop a couple months early.